Welcome to today's show. For those that are meeting me for the first time, my name's Ken Edmonds, and on this channel, I provide information for people that travel with challenges and for their friends and families to make their trips better and help them avoid pitfalls. So today, I am fortunate to have with me two Carnival experts that will talk about accessibility on board and the programs they have to help individuals that travel with challenges. With me, I have Vance Gullickson. He's the Senior PR Manager for Carnival Cruise Line, and Vicki Ray, who is the Vice President of Guest Care and Communications and the ADA Responsibility Officer. So welcome to both of you. I'm really glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having us, Ken. It's great to be here.
Thanks, glad to be here.
Okay, so one of the challenges, and these questions came from people in my website, a lot of them. So one of the questions that people ask about is the challenge of there's not a lot of availability for passengers that need an accessible cabin. So can you offer any advice to help with that?
Yes, I do. I actually think that we have a wide variety of different cabins that we can offer. And I think the most important thing that a guest can do is to let us know what their needs are so that we can match the accommodation to make sure that it meets their needs. So we have three different kinds of cabins. We have a fully accessible cabin that allows for a full, complete turn of the wheelchair in the stateroom. And it allows entry into the bathroom. There is no threshold, no lip. And once in the bathroom, you can move around comfortably within your wheelchair. So those are called our fully accessible staterooms. We also have fully accessible staterooms with single side approach. That means that you would be able to access only one side of the bed. So in a fully accessible stateroom, you can have the wheelchair go on either side of the bed. In a accessible stateroom single side approach, you can have full access to your bed from only one side of the bed. And then we also have a different kind of cabin. And by the way, those fully accessible staterooms, both the single side and the fully accessible, like I said, you can go fully into the cabin, have a complete turning ratio inside. There's grab bars in the stateroom and in the bathroom, and you have full access into the bathroom, no lip and no lip into the shower. Then we also have we have the ambulatory accessible staterooms, which do have just the simple things, grab bars in the bathroom that make you, just from a safety precaution. Those do have a threshold into the shower and into the bathroom that you would have to navigate. But just like for my mom, who's elderly, she's not in a wheelchair, she uses a walker, and those grab bars would be the kinds of things that would give her a greater sense of confidence and safety, just being able to know that she can grab onto those grab bars. Okay. For example, on the Mardi Gras, which is our newest ship that's joining us this year, there's a total of 55 fully accessible staterooms and 27 ambulatory accessible staterooms. So as you can see, that's a fair number of cabins. And on a smaller ship, so the Elation, the Carnival Elation, we have a total of 13 fully accessible cabins with 21 ambulatory accessible staterooms. So the most important thing is when you're making a reservation to let us know what your needs are so that we can make sure that we can take care of finding the cabin that best suits your needs.
Okay, yeah, and that's one of the things I do appreciate is that you differentiate in that you have multiple categories, because some cruise lines, and I feel bad when I do this, is that my wife can move around a little bit, so she's ambulatory.
Okay.
But when we're traveling, she uses a wheelchair because she either has to have a walker, or if she has to sit a long time, she can't sit upright like in a hard chair. She has to be able to recline, so we take her wheelchair.
Okay.
And you have a choice of either taking a fully accessible cabin, which might be needed by somebody that needs a roll-in shower and all of those things.
Yes.
Or, we try to get the wheelchair and it won't fit in a conventional room. So you kind of, you feel bad either way you try to do it. Right.
So the other thing I want to point out is we have a fair number of guests that travel with scooters, Ken. So obviously that's a very convenient way for guests that have some limitations in walking to get around the ship. And so it's also really important for them to let us know that they're traveling with a scooter and make sure that their scooter fits in their stateroom. There's a fair number of guests that sometimes don't want to put the scooter in their stateroom and they want to leave it parked outside their corridor, their hallway, and that is actually a safety violation, and that's not because in the event of an emergency, that would cause an impediment to guests being able to, obviously evacuate the ship in a speedy fashion. So we do require that the scooter be able to fit in the stateroom, and our room stewards are trained to help the guests collapse the scooter and store it in a way that it is out of the way. So the stateroom, it has to be stored in a manner that allows for safe egress out of the stateroom. And our staff is more than happy to help the guest locate that spot in their stateroom where they can safely store their scooter.
Okay, yeah, and that is, that's, like I said, that's very helpful to have the cabin steward be able to help with that. I've been on ships where I've seen them parked in the hallway, and it causes, for us, when my wife's either pushing her wheelchair or riding in her wheelchair, somebody's got a scooter and they left it in the hallway. Now we've got to find another way to get where we want to go. So, yes. And that's just one of those courtesy things that everybody should pay attention to.
Correct. And there are instances, by the way, that we, when we see someone that's traveling with an oversized scooter, we make sure that they have the stateroom that accommodates. So an oversized scooter would have to be able to go into a fully accessible stateroom that has the wider door width. And if we see that someone is traveling with an oversized scooter and their stateroom is not a fully accessible stateroom, they will not be able to board with that scooter. We have made arrangements in most of our ports to have a scooter rental company at embarkation, so that someone that's traveling with an oversized scooter that doesn't fit into their stateroom would have to leave their scooter behind or rent a scooter from this company that's on site, and they'll take possession of and store that person's scooter and rent them a scooter that fits into their cabin. Obviously, if you tell us all this information in advance, it avoids that kind of disappointment once you get to the pier, but we do try to make accommodations for those instances when people forget to tell us that they're traveling with a big scooter. But under no circumstances can we leave those scooters in the hallway, because it impedes the mobility of other guests that are trying to get around, and our crew also that are trying to work and move their housekeeping carts. That's what we've had to resort to.
Well, but that's, the fact that you guys have thought through that is really nice, because now there is an option for people that if they have an oversized, they can either leave the oversized at home and don't bring it to port, or if they get to port with it, they're not out their cruise. They just have to make arrangements, and having somebody that can store it for them is so important. That is amazing. Now, I like the fact that you guys do one thing that's a little bit different than some cruise lines, in that you require people to certify that they need an accessible cabin. Because I've gone through that when we've reserved, for cruises that we didn't get to go on last year, but that's a whole nother thing. But I think that's so helpful, because some cruise lines don't, and so people like the bigger cabin, because, the accessible cabin, so they'll specifically hunt them down on the ship and reserve them when they don't need them.
Right. Well, we recognize that there's a limited number of accessible staterooms, right? And so even in on our online booking tool, those cabins are not offered up immediately for sale unless you tell us that you need an accessible stateroom. And once you select an accessible stateroom, guests do have to attest and confirm that they need the features of that stateroom. And on the confirmation that we send them, we include language that should we find that you do not need the features of that stateroom, and we do have a guest that needs the features of an accessible stateroom, we do reserve the right to move the guest out of that cabin so that we can accommodate someone who definitely needs them. So that hasn't happened that often. And quite frankly, there comes a time when if we have accessible staterooms because there's no demand for them, then they obviously go back into general inventory, right. And then those are sold to anybody who wants them.
Yeah, and that's reasonable because you don't want to, nothing worse than an empty cabin when you sail. So you want to try to fill the ship, and I understand that.
Correct.
But I think the way you handle it is so nice, and especially the disclaimer that says, "Hey, if we find out you don't need it, you could lose it," because
Yeah, and I have to say that there have been those instances when somebody showed up at the ship, they're in a wheelchair. They didn't tell us they were traveling in a wheelchair. Now they're there, and they don't have the right cabin. We sometimes have gone to guests who were free to select an accessible cabin because we didn't have any demand for it at that time. And we've asked them if they could swap, and most of our guests are very gracious and very accommodating and wanting to help our other guests out. So it hasn't been that big of an issue.
well, and that's very nice. And like I said, I love the way you do it. It was kind of interesting. We had an experience happen with another cruise line where I had booked an accessible cabin and they upgraded us into a non-accessible cabin.
Oh, okay.
And there was nowhere to put the 110 square foot or whatever it was cabin. You don't put a pretty good sized wheelchair in there and be able to do anything.
Right.
And in my case, I was very polite but very persistent at the purser's desk, and we wound up getting a cabin. The following day they upgraded us to an empty balcony. The only downside was there was wet paint, and there were little signs, where they'd been working in here, touching up paint. So, please don't touch, So we had to deal with that. But it was.
Well, hopefully that was a temporary situation for you.
Yeah, the paint did dry, but they left us in the cabin for the trip. So that was okay. And I would encourage people in general, you got to learn to roll with the punches because life is not always going to go the way you expect.
I agree with you. You're so right. I mean, I think that having a positive attitude is everything in life. And, sometimes you do find little glitches or hiccups that happen, but I think our staff is trained to be super attentive and super supportive. And if things don't start right out, if your cabin's not quite the same, we have our guest services manager on board the ship, which is the ADA officer for the ship. And if you have any issues, accessibility issues on board, the GSM is your point of contact. And we do include that information in the stateroom so that if anybody has any issues, they can quickly be addressed by the guest services manager on board, hopefully to the guest satisfaction.
And I would say that's one thing that Carnival really prides itself on, is that we really empower people to make decisions and be able to fix things on board. And, a great majority of the time they can fix it right on board. So we encourage people to actually go and say something rather than wait till they get home. So that way they can take care of it on board versus not being able to do anything. And then we find out about it later, and there's nothing we could do at that time. So.
Yeah, and you've got a mad customer. It's a whole lot better to try to get it resolved. And again, the key thing, and I would say this to the audience, is if you run into something like that, you can be persistent, but you can also be polite in the process. If the person that you're talking to doesn't have the authority, feel free to ask for a manager. Just be polite about it. It interests me that how often people want somebody to help them, but they treat them rudely in the process. And I'm like,
yeah,
I just don't understand, because I wouldn't be very helpful.
Yeah, Ken, I also want to point out is Carnival is, we sail full. Fortunately, we're not like hotels that sometimes have empty rooms available. So sometimes I think that our guests think that once they get on board, it'll be easy to just ask for an accessible cabin. And that doesn't happen. We're very often, we are at more often than not, if not always, at capacity. And there is unless we can get another guest to trade, and there's not a lot that we can do. So that's why it's so important to pre-communicate with us in advance of what you need. So once you get to the pier, it can be as seamless a vacation as possible.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a plug in for my industry. Most everybody knows that I do sell travel. As a travel agent, that's one of the things that we serve, is we know who to call, and we can help make sure that you get what you need. As long as you've communicated with your travel agent, make sure that they know what level of support, then they can start to reach out and get you the things you need in place. The worst place to be is on board a full ship and need a different cabin and there's not one available.
Correct.
Because now you have a challenge that you're going to have to deal with, and it's not a lot of fun.
That's right.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Do you have excursions that are accessible? And if so, how can passengers find them?
Yes, actually, we have a dedicated section on our website that tells them about accessible tours. There's a wheelchair icon on the tours that are accessible. Remember that all of the tours in US ports are accessible, but we obviously travel to a lot of ports that are not in the US, and we have to rely on the infrastructure and the equipment that is available in that port. And they may not have hydraulic lifts, or they may have, you know, a lot of cobblestone streets that are not conducive for folks in wheelchairs or scooters. So where possible, well, let me just tell you this. I work very closely with the shore excursion team to make sure that we always ask for accessible tours where possible. Where there is an accessible tour, we want to be able to have it in our portfolio of tours. However, it's not always possible. I remember when we were traveling, sailing to Cuba a couple of years ago, there was nothing in Cuba, in Havana, that allowed for any kind of vehicle that would be able to transport a wheelchair or a scooter. So guests were very much limited there. As much as we wanted to, there just wasn't the infrastructure to be able to support accessibility there. Actually, one of the things that I'm doing now with my communications role is we are reviewing all of the shore excursion descriptions with an eye towards accessibility, and being able to add in there, in addition to the fact whether it's just putting the wheelchair icon to denote accessibility, we want to be able to say, hey, by the way, this requires that you take a few steps. It is ambulatory accessible. Here's a tour where we can store a collapsible wheelchair. Here's a tour where if you want to go into the water, it does require that you take some steps up the ladder to get into this boat. So we recognize that the more information that we give guests, the more helpful it will be in helping them make a decision as to which tour is right for them.
And that is such a welcome and needed improvement, because, you know, again, dealing with the situation, we look at a lot of excursions, and sometimes it's not really clear what somebody's going to need to be able to deal with. He said, we've been fortunate that very rarely do we run into something. Though I did cancel, we had a 10-day Baltics capital tour cruise planned, and we canceled that because so many of the ports were hilly cobblestone streets. And my wife was like, I don't think I can ride in the wheelchair. I can't, they're just, for lots of different reasons. She was like, I don't think we should do that. St. Petersburg was on that, and St. Petersburg is not a particularly accessible town. Mm-hmm. A lot of the things that you would want to go and see, there's no way to get there, and the comments in the guidebooks were that the local population was not particularly helpful either. That nobody really cared whether you came in their tour or not. So, and again, what I would say, and just to add to what Vicki had to say, is that you want to think about planning your tours and looking and doing your research ahead of time. Again, if you have a travel agent, just tell them what you want, what you like to do, and let them find the things. For those of you that are familiar with my website, I have interviews with local visitors bureaus, with people that run excursions, because I constantly look for information that may be useful to people that travel with challenges. So you can start to find the information. A good travel agent is going to be so invaluable for you on that. Okay, so let me ask you this. I'm going to change the order of my questions a little bit.
Okay.
What about tender ports? Are your tender ports typically accessible, or do you typically not have?
Where there are accessible tenders, we will request them. So obviously all US ports have to have accessible equipment, accessible tenders. Actually, the only exception to that is Kona. In Kona, Hawaii, there is absolutely no accessible tender to be had. But the majority of all of our ports were able to secure accessible tenders. Now, whether a guest can get on a tender or not, obviously depends on the marine conditions at that time. And usually accessible tenders means that there is a top loading deck where where it connects directly to the ship's gangway, and the guest can wheel right on to the tender. It's unsafe for guests to be carried onto a tender. So obviously we do not allow that. And our crew, as helpful as we want to be, or as they want to be for safety reasons, we're unable to carry guests from the ship to a tender just for the purpose of getting them on the tender.
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense. And there, it's kind of interesting. I was on a cruise. I told you guys beforehand that I was on a cruise in January, and we went to a private island where they would have to tender, and the waves were breaking over the top of the breakwater, and you know, obviously we couldn't. But I'm like, you know, even if they were tendering, I wouldn't want to do that as an able-bodied person, much less, you know, somebody that had challenges. That just didn't look like any fun at all. What about your private islands? I know, do you tender, or are those docks? Sorry, that was
It's a combination of both.
Okay.
In I believe Half Moon Key we dock, and I think in Grand Turk we tender. Right, Vance? Does that sound right to you? I think that's
flip
right.
that. Half Moon
okay,
is tendering, Grand Turk is docking.
Okay, so at Half Moon with the tender, can you get passengers ashore?
I believe so. I believe that we can.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And sorry about the blindsiding
no
on
worries.
that question. Because that's, you know, I for one cruise line that I sail fairly frequently, I've never been able to get, because they are tender, and I've never sailed at the right time, I guess is what I'm saying, because it's always been a port that we've had to skip because the weather and the waves and stuff were more than the tenders could have. So being able to dock is pretty handy. It was interesting though. We docked, I was on a cruise in March last year, visiting a private island where they had the dock. And after we got tied up, which was quite a process getting the ship in and getting it tied up, the captain said that was the worst docking experience because the wind was just howling, you know, and he said that was the worst docking experience he'd ever had in all his years as a captain, but he did get us to the dock. But it was, like I said, it was pretty brutal. I mean, it wasn't rough. It's just, you could see the captain was fighting, trying to get up, you know, to the dock at a speed that was safe and they could get it secure. Anyway, let's go on to, how about your spa?
There are some parts of the spa that are accessible. We are now working, we have been actually, Ken, for the last couple of years, working with an outside ADA expert company that is doing surveys of all of our ships, with the goal of increasing accessibility on board. And so once they give us their recommendations, we review them, and then we determine what we can incorporate in a ship's dry dock. So there are some spas that have greater accessibility, and there are some spas that some areas are accessible, but not all. But we're working towards greater accessibility on all of our ships.
Okay, what about the Mardi Gras? She's brand new. Hopefully
Mardi Gras is brand new and should be our most accessible ship.
Okay, very good. Oh, so let me ask now, that just brought to mind something I've seen. You guys on the accessible cabins have where the key card or something automatically opens the door and holds it open?
I don't know about that feature. Is it just for the accessible staterooms, you mean?
Yeah, and just on the accessible staterooms.
They should have where you push a button. Is that what?
Oh, push a button. Okay. Well,
yeah, I don't know if I think that you push a button and it has the automatic door opener.
Okay. Yeah. And the only reason I ask is that one of them has the push button, another one has the key card thing, and your sister line has it where as you walk up with their medallion, the door just automatically opens.
Yeah, that's really fancy. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but we do have an automatic door opener.
Yeah, and again, that's so helpful. So that brought one more question, and I'm sure the answer is yes, but just on the accessible bathrooms on the, you know, that are in the public bathrooms, I'm assuming that those have the push button door openers as well.
Yes.
Okay, because I've been on some that did, and you know, and then I've been on some that didn't lately. So I say lately.
And that is part of that accessibility journey that I just referenced on the ships that have been our older ships that have been refurbished, like Carnival Freedom, like Carnival Paradise, like Carnival Elation. Those ships didn't start off having those things, but as we work with these ADA experts to increase accessibility, we've added those features. And we will continue to do so on future dry docks.
Yeah, that is so nice. It is so encouraging to see cruise lines like yourself taking these kinds of steps to make them accessible and make everything better for people. What about
and we
pools
also
and
are working towards creating as much of an inclusive experience as possible, right? So if there's a karaoke bar, we want to be able to have, or a piano bar, we want to have guests be able to sit up close and enjoy the same experience as everybody else is. So again, we're really looking for all those opportunity, as much opportunity as possible to increase accessibility.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so what about your pools and hot tubs? Are they accessible?
Some pools have hydraulic lifts and some not yet. Again, on those ships where we need to do refurbishments, where we'll add lifts, but some of our ships already have hydraulic lifts.
Okay,
yes, the pool lifts, not hydraulic lifts, excuse me. They do have the pool lifts.
Okay, but what about for the hot tubs? Probably not.
I don't know the answer to the hot tubs, sorry. Okay. I can find out and get that to you if you like.
Yeah, and that is less common unless somebody has even on shore-based facilities, unless they have a pretty good sized hot tub, just the space it requires. And usually on a ship, the hot tubs are smaller and close together, so it might be a challenge. Okay, all right. So let me ask, what accommodations do you make for the blind?
Okay, so once again, that's really important that you let us know in advance. If you require a Braille menu, if you give us notice, we can have a Braille menu created and have it on board for when you cruise. In the stateroom, we have what we call a good to know flyer that has a lot of really important information, a lot of it being safety related, and that is also produced in Braille. We have printers on board, so if you require large print, we can print anything for you in large print. We have reading software in our internet cafes, so that if you wanted to look to see what our dining room menus are, that you can have the reading software translate that for you. In the stateroom, we also have an audible version of the daily activity schedule that you can hear what's going on. I think that's about it.
Well, that's actually quite a bit. That should take
and
care of us.
Obviously, yeah, sorry, and our staff is very much trained to ask you what you need. So if you want the menu to be read to you at dinner, they can read the menu. They're very good about using the clock method to describe the plate, what's on your plate, so that you know where your salads are, where the meat is, where the vegetables, where the the starchy stuff. So I think we've tried to teach our folks to just be, to ask questions of our guests to see how helpful we can be.
Okay, very, very nice. Thank you. What about for those that are deaf?
Okay, so we have a closed captioned on everything, any content that is produced by Carnival. So if we do any kind of programming, we will add closed caption on the Stateroom TV programming. We also can offer closed caption in our seaside theater, closed caption movies in our seaside theaters. We have a safety briefing playing in the stateroom at all times that is open captioned. We provide TTY kits for those guests that can use a TTY kit. We also provide interpreters for guests who request them and who rely on American Sign Language as their primary source of communication. If you give us at least 60 days notice that you need an ASL interpreter, we'll do our best to secure one for you. And those are for ships that sail from US ports of call. We also have headsets in our main showroom that amplify sounds, and you can check those out while you enjoy the show.
Okay, very good.
I also want to point out that the Carnival Hub app that we have on board is also highly accessible. So guests can use the Carnival Hub app also to be able to look up different things to enjoy on board.
Okay, all right, very nice. What about for those that are autistic or traveling with children, perhaps that are autistic?
Well, I'm glad you asked this question, because this is something that is very near and dear to my heart. Last year, Carnival Cruise Lines became the first cruise line to be certified sensory inclusive by Culture City. Culture City is a leading nonprofit that is dedicated to providing inclusive vacations for guests that have sensory disabilities, including autism. In order to do that, or to become certified, all of our crew all of our guest-facing crew had to take training on how to help guests with sensory disabilities. And then in addition to that, after we completed the training, we have sensory bags that you can check out on board. And that includes noise canceling headsets, that includes fidget toys, that includes a card that tells you where there are loud sounds and bright noises, bright lights and loud noises on the ship. In our children's programming, we also have trained our counselors how to best help a child that might be having a sensory overload situation. We have the weighted vests, we have toys to help calm and soothe them. So it was a program that we kicked off last March, right before, unfortunately, we went down. But we had been doing a pilot for a few months on a couple of ships, and we had gotten great reviews. And this is not just for kids with autism, but it's for anybody that may have some kind of sensory disability or cognitive disability. So if you have a PTSD, or if you have some dementia, our crew are trained to assist you. And you also you wear a lanyard that says Culture City VIP. And that is so that our crew can recognize that you may need just a little bit more assistance from us.
If I could just chime in here, I have a son with Down syndrome, and over the years, we've sailed numerous times with Carnival, and the crew have always been nothing short of wonderful to my son, Nicholas. And it's, I think it's part of our culture to be very welcoming and inclusive. And I just, wanted to, from personal experience, I find, a Carnival cruise a great vacation for our entire family. So.
Okay, well, that's very nice to know from a firsthand experience. It's nice to know that you've thought about it. I hadn't thought about dementia patients, but again, they could wind up needing something. What about because this is what question that's come up before. What about for the safety briefing for people that have sensory challenges?
Yes, actually, if you let us know in advance, we can make certain arrangements for you. For example, we recommend that for embarkation, you choose to come at a time that is non-peak, right? So we say, try to come towards the end of embarkation when it's less crowded, notwithstanding whenever you show up. If it's crowded, then ask for a supervisor, and the supervisor will immediately take you away and to give you a private check-in experience. The safety briefing, once you're on board, you can speak to the guest services manager. We can make arrangements for a private safety briefing. We can make arrangements to have a private table in a quiet area of the dining room. So there's a lot that we can do. If you communicate with us what your needs are, we're more than happy to work with the family to see how we can best take care of the guest.
Okay, and so it's interesting that we've come back to that fact that make sure that give people notice in advance, and they'll be prepared to help you. You can't just show up and expect everything to fall in place, because some of these things take some time and some coordination.
Correct.
Okay, and so on board and ashore, what are some of the assistance that might be available for those that travel with challenges?
Well, like Van said, we hire the folks that Carnival hires are those folks that have a hospitality in their DNA. So aside from the training that we provide them, these are folks that naturally want to help guests and that come from different cultures and past backgrounds where their business is hospitality. So if you ask, our goal and our aim is to take the best care of you and to give you the best vacation for people of all abilities. And I think that, that is what sets us apart, is the difference that our crew makes is in how we take care of you.
Okay. All right. Well, very nice.
But assistance is available, from the moment that you get dropped off at the port of embarkation. If you need assistance at check-in, all you need to do is ask. And likewise on the ship, your stewards, your dining room team, your guest services, Certainly nobody on Carnival, none of our team members want to have an unhappy guest. And we know that we have the power to deliver an exceptional vacation experience, and we want to do that. You know, we know that vacations are important, and that it's a privilege to be able to, when people entrust their time and their money to us, and we want them to walk away. We want them to go home with a great vacation experience. And you know, as Vance mentions earlier on in our talk here, we do a really good job of empowering our crew to be able to resolve whatever issue arises and just make sure that it's handled to the best way possible for the guest.
And all of this also applies to, you know, people with dietary restrictions or allergies, food allergies. If you let us know ahead of time, you know, we have a variety of things in place that we can try to help with that.
I'm so excited that you mentioned this, Vance, because one of the things that we're going to be rolling out when we return to service is new software that we have that's going to really help us help guests with food allergies. And it is new software where your dining room attendant will be able to ask you if you have any food allergies, and we'll plug that in, whether it's eggs or wheat or whatever it is. And we'll be able to tell you, these are the things on the menu that you can eat. That does not include those, that ingredient. These are the dishes on the menu that we can modify to exclude that ingredient. And these are the things that you have to stay away from. It's going to be called Mate, and it's a new software that we're going to be launching as soon as we return to service.
Okay, the first word of that title died out. I don't know. So what's the
Menu Mate?
Menu Mates. Okay.
Menu Mate. Yes, super excited because we do know that there is a very large percentage of the population that have some kind of dietary limitations, and now we'll be able to really let them know what they can and they cannot have. And they'll be able to also go on our internet hub, and they'll be able to look. You know, there'll be a tablet there that they can use also and look up the menu for that night and be able to plug in what their allergy is, and they'll be able to see, oh, I can have this, or I can have that, or I can ask the waiter to modify this entree so that I can enjoy that.
Oh, that is very slick. And you know, it's funny because I missed that on my list of questions, and yet I have a very good friend, a young man that's terribly allergic to peanuts, you know, and so
yeah,
he comes over to eat. We have to be extremely careful of what the situation is, so that we don't put him at risk. We
take care of guests now that have food allergies. In fact, in the galley, there is a dedicated area that is only for people to take care of the guests that have food allergies. But what happens now is basically, you know, your waiter shows up and they ask you if you have any food allergies, and then he's got to go back to that place in the kitchen and say, well, Ken is allergic to peanuts. What can he eat? And by having this software where we've loaded all of our recipes, all the ingredients, it'll just make that whole process so much smoother, because now we'll be able to actually display to you, here are the things that you can have, here are the things that we can modify, here are the things that you can't have. We don't have to have that back and forth with the galley regarding your allergy or anything like that. So it'll be a smoother, more efficient process for the guests and for our team.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so let me ask you this: what besides the things that we've talked about, what other enhancements you guys have in works? I know you said you have an ADA team that's reviewing the way things work now. So you have things that you're hoping to improve even more in the future?
Well, it is, you know, as each ship, and we have, you know, a fair number of ships still to do, but, you know, every year we add more and more ships. We refurbish the ships to increase accessibility. So even folks, we have the new the Bolt roller coaster on Mardi Gras. While there are some limitations, there are a fair number of guests who will be able to enjoy that ride. Or not even, we have an accessible platform where you'll be able to go to the platform and see perhaps a relative take a ride on the roller coaster. So I'm pretty excited about that as well.
Yeah, that again, very, very cool. Okay, so
but I think also, I mean, just the whole way that we operate, Ken, I think is now looking at things from a different lens and trying to be as inclusive and accessible as possible for all guests, regardless of what your ability is.
Yeah. You know, and from our discussion today, that's really obvious. So let me ask one question about itineraries. Are there itineraries that you think are better for accessibility than others?
Well, obviously, if you call in a US port, those ports have to be accessible. I can't think of, I don't know about itineraries because there are so many variations in tours, right? But nothing really comes to mind. But obviously, if you go to Key West or if you go to Alaska, you're going to find a lot more accessibility than if you're going to, some remote destination that may not have the infrastructure to support accessible transportation.
Yeah, and I would say my experience is that Alaska is probably far more accessible than most people would expect. Skagway is a perfect example. The town is pretty much perfectly flat.
Yes.
All the sidewalks, everything works really well. They have a lot of accessible tours there. So Skagway is an obviously a good choice. Ketchikan's a little more challenging, though. I will say we did a tour with another company. And with my wife's situation, what they did was they sent like a UTV and she transferred to that. And then I just wheeled her wheelchair because especially in Alaska, tidal changes can be huge. And so something that might be flat at high tide might be 6 or 7 or 8 feet of slope on it, and so they took care of that. But Ketchikan was, what I would say, was probably the least accessible just because it is so hilly. If you're touring on your own in Ketchikan, you better have either a charged battery in your scooter or somebody with some oomph in their legs. So it's not good for an old man like me trying to push a wheelchair up some of the hills in Ketchikan. There is an area around the port that's nice. And if you didn't know this, I'll share this piece of information. For your passengers that are traveling one way and getting off in either, do you guys use Whittier or Seward? For northbound?
We were sailing out of Seattle.
Yeah, but if you do or do you not have any one-way itineraries? I didn't look.
We don't. No.
Oh, okay, so it'd be some of your sister lines. I was gonna say, because the one thing that's really cool is in Seward, and I think in Whittier it's the same situation. The Alaskan Railway, they have manually crank up elevators to get people in wheelchairs on the train, and then they have an elevator on the train that'll take you up to the observation car.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty amazing. Okay, well, listen, I appreciate both of you guys' time tonight. You've been great guests. It has been a real pleasure talking to you. Any last words to people that are watching this video? And this video will be evergreen. It'll be out there for a long time. So what would you share in the way of parting thoughts for those that are facing challenges and want to travel Carnival?
Yeah, I mean, I really like to stay away from the word facing challenges, because I think we want to welcome guests of all abilities, obviously. And I think that, we obviously are known for fun and memorable vacations, and we are so eager to get back to cruising. And so call, book, let us know how we can best help you. I mean, we're very much looking forward to having everybody sail with us.
Yeah, to echo Vicky's sentiments, I mean, we've carried 90 million people in our 49 years now, and we're just looking to get back to business and welcoming our guests and just showing them the best vacation they can have, and with the best crew in the entire cruise industry. I mean, our crew is really the secret sauce that make us different than other cruise lines, and they just do a fantastic job at showing everybody a great vacation.
That's correct.
I was saying, you guys have done a fantastic job by making yourself available to be interviewed, because I know it took time out of your day, and I really appreciate it. And I want to thank you both so much for being on our show.
Thank you for having us.
And for those of you that are watching that haven't subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, hit the like button if you thought the content's worthwhile, so YouTube will share it. Hit subscribe and notify so you'll know when my next video comes out. We'll see you next time.